So today I'm going to be talking about building emails 70 times faster with reverse science fiction and Kayne Wes. And for those who don't know me, which is all of you, my name is Adam Brock, and I am a senior front-end developer. Also, this is my first talk ever, so it's going to be riddled with mistakes, and I'm pretty sure there's... I'm pretty sure it's all the slides are like out of order, so yeah. Join me on this wonderful ride to the abyss, and yeah, I'll get started now. So I've been an agency developer and designer for the last 8 years, so I've pretty much been born and bred into the agency way of doing things. Started as a designer developer and literally everything else for the first 4 years, and then shifted into development once I realized that design and development were really merging together already at that time. And that trend has just proven to continue. So I'm dead inside. Previously, I was shouldering the burden of greatness with Chan in advertising at Leo Burnett. So I think, yeah, half the agency probably had a mental breakdown or two at one point or another, which only led to good things, as you can see. Now I'm trying to lead a team and working on improving worthwhile things at Tundra. So shout out to Tundra. These are some of the brands I've worked on. At the moment, Nike is taking up about 50 to 60% of my time. But I've also worked on these brands as well. So I've got a pretty good idea of the way companies work, and on a long enough timeline, they all become very similar. So just to give you a quick snapshot of what I do, these have been the last 4 weeks for me in Nike land. The first project was building a shoe vending machine for the launch of the new React shoe. So we built this using Vue.js, Node, and Socket.io. So there was actually people in that space behind the vending machine with a backend kind of filtering out orders and stuff like that. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Never done it before, so pretty neat. And then literally 2 days ago, we did MX Day, where we created 5 augmented reality moments using A-Frame, AR.js, and WebRTC. Again, we hadn't done it before. We had 10 days to execute it after I pitched it to Nike, and in about 5 minutes as just an idea, and they wanted us to do it. So we did that, which was also really cool. So today I really want to address agencies. A lot of the talks I've been to, there's always a lot of awesome people from client side or product-focused companies, which is always awesome. But I think agencies also need to be kind of spoken for too. And if, is there any, like, we have a show of hands, like whose agency here and who's, cool, so yeah, whatever. Like third of you maybe is agency, so that's cool. So in agency, there's obviously a need for speed. If you've been in that environment, it can be really intense. Briefs will come in the morning. You have to execute by midday and deliver by end of day. So it can be really time critical. So I just want to kick off with this quote from Mad Men. It's, if you don't like what's being said, then change the conversation. You've probably been in a situation, and literally every one of you has come across a situation or a conversation with a client or a conversation internally or working on a process that just doesn't make sense. And a lot of the times it's easy to get complacent and just go along with it. And this kind of folklore of doing things the way that they were done yesterday, and that's the only reason you're doing it, seems crazy to me. So I kind of like this snapshot of being able to change things if you don't like what's being said. I'm just going to give you a quick example of some of the dumb stuff that I build in my free time at work to help people out. So this is an example of an Electron app I built. I found out the producers were spending about 3 hours manually going through these massive CSVs for email sends. And so I decided to build this little app for them, which automated their entire flow. So I took 3 hours of work down to 3 seconds with a lazy egg cartoon. And the reason that I built it in Electron is really to remove the barrier to entry. Like, I could have easily sent them my code and got them to spun up a Node server or something, but they wouldn't have liked that. And all the producers actually have this saved to their desktop, even if they don't use it, because they like having a little egg icon at the bottom. So yeah, this is a website that I created in 4 hours because my agency wouldn't let me paste my job ad that I had wrote I realized that we were pretty shit at recruiting for about the last 12 months. All the applicants we got in, we just weren't feeling any of the applicants. And we realized it was because of the copy that we're putting out on our ads. So I basically rewrote this ad in spur of the moment, as if I was writing it to my own team. And yeah, HR wasn't too happy about it. So they said, you will never post this under Tundra. So my first instinct was, I said to my tech director, well, it's clear to me we have to start our own agency. So what do we call it? And I wanted agency.agency, but it was taken. So we settled for digitalagency.lol. So you can go there, it's still up. If you want to apply, we're still looking. So the ironic part is, in the 2 weeks after we posted this, we had the best candidates we had had in 2 years. We had the tech directors from a bunch of the top agencies in Melbourne, and just a whole bunch of people inquiring, just mostly asking if it's a joke. And the answer is yes, it is a joke. But we took it seriously. So yeah, we had a great response from it. We also hijacked web directions. So I made 300 business cards, and we put them everywhere. This one was on the desk next to a recruiter, which says, you're not really my type. And the other one was in a toilet, which says, down for docking. So this was our real recruitment. We had a budget of $0. And again, the return on investment was pretty good. I'll run through this pretty quickly. So you can go to this one as well. This is death by meeting. So you can calculate the true cost of a meeting by adding number of people in it. And it tells you in real time how much money and time it's costing for everyone. So yeah, this one's been really popular as well. So you basically, yeah, you can reevaluate your life while you're in the meeting. Cool, and last one. We have a platform called Nest, which is the Nike email self-service tool. It's built on Salesforce, which is awful. And I did this to make the designer's job easier. They have to resize these assets every single day. So I made this 90s themed tool called Nest Quick, where they can do this in about 60 seconds. Anyway, so I'm just going to give you a quick 5-step thing of going rogue at work. So you can identify a recurring problem by just counting the amount of times your team mentions jumping out of the window on Slack. Recurring is a really key thing. You just want to identify problems that are popping up all the time that you can solve. And then ask yourself, what would this look like if it were easy? I don't mean a lazy version of that. I just mean, like, if you could come up with a fantasy solution, what would that look like? So yeah, you want to come up with a science fiction solution that takes you from 0 to 1, so something that just doesn't exist and you create it, or is 10 times better, not 10% better than what you already have. Then you want to reverse it. So you decide what to build first, and you work backwards to figure out how you could develop an initial version quickly and make it fun, like I was demonstrating before. Execute a MLP, minimum lovable product, of your idea in downtime or at home, and then demo it to your team. So that's a super high level blueprint of what I do. So EDMs, these are public enemy number 1 for repeatable work in agencies. Everyone complains about these things. I personally find them cool, challenging, to make them interesting. So that's kind of what my talk's going to be about. So in 2015, when I first started, EDMs were taking 30 hours to build. It was out of control. They were 100% hand-coded. All the inline styles were done manually. It was a little bit ridiculous. In 2016, the former tech lead introduced sort of an automatic system. So it would get foundation and inline it with this weird Ruby-based inliner. And then Nike moved to using Salesforce, which, yeah, that's right. Kind of threw a spanner in the works. It was just a really uncomfortable process, as Dan can attest to as well. And in 2017, we switched to this Yeoman generator, which basically generated like a boilerplate version of the email, which, yeah, let's say 12 hours, so on average. Then we lost half of our front-end development team in a single afternoon, which threw me into a period of trying to figure out where to go next. And it basically kickstarted a 2 to 3 month period of just trying to rethink everything we're doing and how can we actually not hire any more people and still do all the same amount of work. So 2018, the spoiler is it's kind of in the title, but we'll reveal that a bit later. So rethinking EDMs, or destroying Nest, the Nike email self-service tool. We send out a shitload of EDMs for Nike. This is why it's such a big thing in our agency and why it deserves some thought. So I'm not going to be talking about bridging the gap between design because I think the shortest distance between 2 points is 0. Similar to what Mark was just talking about, I personally think that the designer and developer mediums should really just be the same thing wherever possible. I don't think it's a good use of anyone's time to redo the exact same thing in 2 different mediums and keep those in sync and vice versa. It just doesn't make any sense. So I started having to think about how to do this, and I've got a slide from Event Horizon where they show you how to like bend space-time, where you go through the space-time in the piece of paper. So that's kind of a nice way to visualize it. So I realized that emails are really just content. So what if I were to build a component-driven content management system so that anyone could design, build, and update these emails? The thing that really drags these down is they're not that slow to build or to come up with the first version, but the feedback loop can be very time-consuming, and it can go through 3 people just to get the developer to make a change. It goes through the loop again. What if the producer or the copywriter could just log in and do these changes without really having to go back to the developer or the designer? And what if the designers could build these emails without ever needing a developer? That's what I wanted to solve. So back to going rogue. The question isn't who's going to let me, it's who's going to stop me. So it takes a lot of energy to actively stop someone in your agency from doing something. They'll run out of steam pretty quick. They can write a mean memo. You know, they can tell you they don't like what you're doing, but they're too busy with their emails and their busy work to actually really have any real fight in them. So I will always win. So I built West, which is the first working email self-service tool as opposed to the Nike one, which was made by Hate, by the Brown family, which is my team name. I run the team like a cult. I take all the best lessons from cults and apply them to the team, which has worked fairly well so far. Also, fuck you so much, Salesforce. So I'm just going to go through the stages of this endeavor. So I'll break it down for you. So the back end, I chose Craft CMS. I really like the CMS. I don't know how many people have used Craft. Any hands? 0? Yeah, obviously. So yeah, if you haven't checked it out and you use CMS in your agency, definitely do this. On a scale of Drupal to good, this is like way past good. So it's really the content managers and the developers just on the same level. Like it's so good. I'd really recommend it, and the team is really good too. They're an awesome development team who's behind this. So yeah, this is what I built it on. I use Craft CMS mostly because of its component-based model that's kind of built into the core of Craft. It really just sings for using a component-based system. So you can basically create emails as you would with any other content. I've created some custom fields. So I've got platforms, so Salesforce, MailChimp, Campaign Monitor we've added recently. So these will change the templates on the fly when you're building. So if you need to, which we do often, for some reason, we have to send one email to multiple, using multiple different services. So I can change that in here, and all the templates will basically change those tags and those platform-specific variables on the fly for me. So as you can see here, this is a bit of an example of what it looks like in Craft. So you have a list of components. I took the 80-20 approach with the designers. So we basically audited our emails and figured out what are the 80% of the components we're using to, the 20% of the components we're using to get 80% of the results in our designs. And we narrowed it down to these. So we can actually build most of what we need to with these components. So you can pretty much just keep adding to the page, rearrange them, all that sort of stuff. So there's a few. There's image component. These images are all getting uploaded to Amazon S3 on the fly, so there's no sort of middle management with assets, which is great. This is the test component. You can change basically anything you want to as a designer, which is really cool. And this is just the configuration screen in Craft. So I'm using some matrix fields, which are basically repeatable fields with multiple fields. So that's what I'm using to build the components structurally. So speaking of components, I'm using Foundations for Email 2 as a base. This is a really solid base for emails. There's no glory in trying to write your own email framework. These guys have done it. They've ironed out all the bugs. It's great on Outlook. We've added a few extra things of our own, of course, but this is just a super solid base. So the components look something like this. They're using templating language for craft. So you can see the spacer component is from Foundation. So that's what it looks like. It's just written as spacer. And you can put a size in there, and that'll give you a vertical spacer in your email. And what we're doing is giving each component in the loop effectively a unique ID. And then we're rendering some inline style tags, which later get inlined onto the actual element and also into the head tag for the responsive or media query stuff. So this is an example of the image one. All the image calculations are done in Craft, so you no longer have to manually look at the Photoshop file or Sketch file and check what the dimensions of the image are and halve it and get the retina right and change it again when they update the image inevitably 10 times before it gets sent. So this takes care of all that headache as well. And the loop basically looks something like this. So it's just looping through every component in the post, and then it's searching for the relevant component name based on the name of the component handle in the CMS. So it's really simple. Just passes it all the data that you put in the CMS and assigns it the platform so it can put those tags in correctly. So yeah, it's really simple. We're also using Sass for most of the styling. The styling inline is just the dynamic styles that you need to get from the CMS, but the rest is just written in Sass. It's a really simple build script. It's just using npm scripts. I'm using the Inky, which is Foundation, that templating transpiler kind of CLI. I'm just running it in here. And Node Sass just to compile that. And then also Fractal, which I'll run through briefly in a minute for the UI. So it's a really simple build script. It just compiles the Inky templates into HTML tables, and you can do it all through the CLI, so it's quite nice. The style guide, it's a really rudimentary style guide. I'm just using Fractal, which I don't know if anyone's used before. There's a Twig adapter for it, but it didn't support Inky, so I had to create a new adapter called Twinky, which is a Twig and Inky adapter, so it can render both at the same time in my UI kit. So this is roughly what it looks like. You can see the data attributes that you're passing through. The HTML tab actually shows you sort of structure is there as opposed to the component custom tags we just had up a second ago. Should flick to the view in a second, hopefully. Got this pretty slowly. There we go. So that's, you can see row, columns. Those are the original tags that we'd write as developers, and then Inky outputs all the correct syntax or the correct HTML. So that brings me to Kayne. So Kayne is a plugin that I wrote for Craft, which is the greatest email plugin of this generation. There's a couple others we've written. Gudetama, which is a plugin that basically lets you use the at symbol for specifying your component paths instead of like trying to find exactly how many levels to go up for your components. And also our Pokedex plugin, which is just a bunch of random twig filters we wrote. And Neo is the plugin we're using to have nested matrix fields, basically. So you can see here, I'm basically using the Twig extensions to inline all of that code. So obviously the code we just saw a second ago was all very kind of loose. This basically runs through it and matches up the CSS to the class names, and it inlines all of that style onto the HTML elements, because that's basically what you have to do for emails. So this takes care of all of that. You don't need a Node script to do it. I did that because I wanted it all to be done in PHP, so you wouldn't have to actually fire up a development environment. Which brings me to the front end. This is what it looks like on the front end. So anyone on my team can log in. They can view a list of all the emails that have been built. You can click on the source button, and this will spit out production-ready code for you. So if a producer needs to log in, they can grab that, throw it into Salesforce, and it's all done. So you'll see here, this is what an email looks like in this example. And shortly, you'll see the rendered code. So it's going to look quite ugly, but to me, it's beautiful. So here we go. So this is what the final version looks like. This is the production ready email. So you can see all the styles have been grouped in a massive media query at the top for all the styles that were needed there. We've got all of our class names have been shortened just because it's cool. You can have way less characters in a huge email. All the assets are uploaded to S3. So again, no need to do that automatic. I'd do that manually as well. And yeah, this is good to go basically. So that's where it ends up. So in 2015, we already saw, so it went from 30 hours to 18 hours to 12 hours. So what does it look like today? Well, the answer is we go from brief to production ready in 10 minutes. So I'll just run through what we ended up with. I also recorded I didn't do it for this talk, but my very first production build using this tool, I screen capped. It literally took me 10 minutes, so I've time-lapsed it to 5 minutes just because I thought we could play it in the Q&A time. So I'll run through all the benefits and what we ended up with. So we got extendable bulletproof components, which are all litmus tested, which is the email testing platform. So they've all been run through that. We've got a UI kit. There's no barrier to entry, so anyone can use this. We've got this hosted on a domain, a subdomain, which is just for people at our office to use. So it means a designer can go in here. They're building these in Craft now. They don't have to, do it in Photoshop or Sketch or whatever they did before, which is super cool. So there's no development requirement. You just go to the website, log in, and start building it out in the CMS. And everyone loves it. The feedback I've had internally is so good. The producers are really into it. All the changes are tracked. We can see who's updating what revisions have been made, roll back, duplicate. It's crazy. It's really good. As I said, we can build an email from a blank canvas in 10 minutes. So that's literally getting the brief and building it. It takes 10 minutes. And for emails that we've already built using a template and we just have to make a couple of changes, we can duplicate it and have it done in about 5 minutes. And from the front end, we've literally got a one-click process to copy out that production-ready code, and anyone can drop it into whatever email platform we've built it for. And the best part about this for me is being in the agency where this is something that happens on the daily. We're basically getting paid out dividends in time. So all the time we save that we don't have to think about these solved problems, we can actually use that time to build more of these things for other problems that we want to solve in the agency as well. So for me, that's the biggest benefit. So this is my time lapse, basically, of building my very first email for production, which we sent out from getting the brief in Jira to having the code done. So this took 10 minutes, and I've time lapsed it for 5 for the interest of time. So that's it.
Awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool.
Thank you.
So how much does an agency charge for a 10-minute EDM?
Good question. You'd have to check with my production team. Yeah.
That's so cool. Any questions for Adam?
I'll carry the microphone to you instead of throwing it at you, if you like.
Over here, Mark.
Obviously, like, I'm into tools as well. I'm curious, like, how much time you spend working on the actual tooling, and whether you get help from other people in the agency as well.
On the tooling?
On building the tools, yeah.
So this one, honestly, I did this, the first iteration, which is not too far removed from this. I actually did it on a weekend at home because I had this idea and I just really wanted to get it done. I wasn't getting the time at work at the time. So I actually went home and did almost like a proof of concept. It didn't have any of the inlining stuff or any of those sort of extra features, but the main concept was there, and I built that out at home just to prove that it would work. And then from there, I kind of told a couple of people about it. I don't think anyone knew what the heck I was talking about, and so I just kept refining it further in my downtime at work when I had a couple of spare hours. I just work on it. So yeah, the tooling itself was quite straightforward. We had a lot of these components almost built out from the previous iterations of this, our email setup. So I kind of ported them over and matched up the data to where we needed them. So yeah, honestly, it didn't take too long. I think that the time spent was, well worthwhile for the gains that we got. So. And also, I didn't really get any help originally, again, because I don't think anyone really knew what I was getting at. But now that I have built it, we've got other developers who are constantly improving it as well. So we've done a lot of work. As we build these things, we find new things we want to add, or recurring problems again that come up that we want to kind of build into it so we don't have to worry about them again. So it's an ongoing thing. This isn't done. We have a few other ideas that we want to do. We've got a half-working version where we can actually just click a button in here and send it off to Salesforce, so we never have to log into that ever again. So that's kind of one extra idea, but there's more ideas too. So yeah, it's also not specific to Nike. I just want to reiterate that. Actually, I never even said it, but you can use this for other clients too. So you can actually set up client-specific editor environments, basically. So if you select Nike as the client, or if you select another client, you can tailor that editing experience and those components per client as required. So I kind of designed it like that because I knew eventually someone else might want to use it. So,
I was just wondering, you're saying about the 80-20 rule. What
Yeah.
happens when you have something that is a bit more custom, or you
Yep.
haven't got a template for?
For sure. So there's two answers to that question. One is to keep the design team in check. So if they propose something new, if it's like 5% different from what we already have, typically they're not going to get it. They're not going to get it in there. Having said that, with emails, because they're quite restricted anyway, the freedom really comes from the images that they put in it as well, to some extent, and the typography that they decide to use, or the styles they want to use. You can actually get a lot of mileage from these few set of components. So having said that, it is set up to have modifiers. So we have sort of the BEM, like -- modifier file naming syntax. So we have multiple versions of the footer, for example. So you can select from a radio button list which version of the footer you want to use, and that's just an extra file in the folder, which is footer -- whatever. So we can easily extend them like that. In terms of adding a new component, if we really had to for some reason, which we have, we'd build it, put it in there, test it like crazy, make sure it's all good to go, and then ship it, I guess. Yeah. We're definitely not against adding new components.
And how long would that take with that last process you just said? Like how long?
For a new component?
Yeah.
It depends on the component. So this stores component that you can see on the screen right now, that took a little while, but like we're talking, a few hours, not like weeks or days worth of work. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Hey, how do you keep the designers in check, and also what's the process around contributing a new component?
Yep. So the design question is quite easy. If you just talk to the design team, they're pretty much on board. Like I think the problems come up when the designers and developers just don't talk to each other, which happens a lot from what I know. But our team's pretty tight. We talk very often, and we'll usually discuss it first. And I think their knowledge on this topic has become like so much greater since we did start talking about it, and they're like totally on board with working with what we're doing. And we're trying to just work in the same platform and do it all together, basically in the same platform. So yeah, but yeah, they're pretty good. I think they understand the methodology and the ideology of using components and reusing things as much as possible. And I think they like the restriction as well. Like I don't think it's a bad thing. I think they just have to be more creative. Like this one on the screen right now. It's literally just images, text, and spacing. It's fine. And you can still get the result that you need. So I think they're really into GIFs as well. So GIFs give a lot more flexibility to what they want to do, which is just images anyway. So yeah, they're totally fine. They're not out of control. Yeah.
Awesome. One more question over here.
Cool. So many questions.
So I think there's a few other type of apps out there that do allow you to customize your emails
Yep.
In a similar way. So I'm curious about what were the reasons why you decided to do it fully custom, and has the rest of the agency regretted moving to Salesforce?
So that wasn't our choice. That was a company choice by our client. It didn't pose too many restrictions. It's just a really buggy platform, and often it just breaks or doesn't load, and there's basically no image management. You can't just upload a zip file and it takes care of everything. You really have to deliver the goods in terms of finalized HTML. They give you a block of HTML, and that's whatever's in there, that's what they're going to use. So That's probably the downfall with it. We used to use MailChimp. They use MailChimp all the time. We could upload a zip. It was a decent flow. But yeah, Salesforce presents issues which we've kind of negated with this. But to your first question, in terms of email builders, when I first started, we were actually building email templates for MailChimp, so you could build the templates in MailChimp. So almost using this kind of pattern. Again, it was a bit buggy. It didn't always work the way we wanted it to. With this method, we can really go granular, and we basically own the code. Like we know what's going into it. We know that we're using Foundation. We know that the templates we're writing are exactly the way we want them. And we do have a few bespoke components as well that, recreating them in something like, I'm not exactly sure what editors you're talking about, but something like Campaign Monitor or MailChimp, where they do have a similar sort of drag and drop kind of interface. You're still kind of playing with their components. I know you can upload templates with tags that let you do that, which is fine, but really, we really like this because it's really treating emails as content, and we can let anyone log in and just make iterations, and Craft's really delivered the goods as far as tracking those iterations and just being an awesome platform to build in. And the designers love it, the developers love it, everyone's really on board. So it's also platform agnostic. So if we do need to ship 3 different versions, one for Salesforce, MailChimp, and Campaign Monitor, we can do that with changing one radio button and copying the code. Like we don't have to log into 3 different platforms, have platform-specific things already preloaded in all 3. Like for us, it just makes sense. I think for a less crazy client, Nike's awesome, but the amount of work that we do in terms of emails, it's such a high frequency. And this is a small email. We do massive ones as well. So managing that across 3 platforms is just not gonna work. So for our benefits, this really solves the problem that we were having. So that would be my answer for that.
That's awesome. We might hold it there. And
yeah, that's cool. I've taken enough time. I was expecting literally everyone to leave, and Dan would never get to talk.
Awesome.
I'm glad that you stuck around. Yeah.
Thanks, Adam. And
Cool.
yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.